Bert was 17 years old, and it was 3:11 a.m. when she woke up that night. Wide awake, not groggy, something had pulled her out of her sleep. She lay there in the dark, listening, and then she heard it. Footsteps, soft and careful, on the stairs just outside of her bedroom. Her door was to the left of her bed, and she was lying with her back to it, facing the wall. The footsteps got closer, and then they stopped right outside of her room. The doorknob turned slowly, so slowly, in fact, she could hear the mechanism inside clicking as it rotated. She thought it was one of her parents just checking in on her. Then the door began to open, and it started making this creaking sound. Whoever was opening it paused, then shoved it with one fell swoop to silence that creak. She still thought that maybe it was her mom or dad until they clicked on the flashlight. Then terror hit her like ice water. She froze completely, couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything except try to keep her breathing steady, all while her heart was hammering in her chest. The intruder was standing behind her. She was facing away from them, luckily, so they couldn't see her eyes wide open and fearful in the dark. As they shone the beam directly on her head, she could feel the light dance on her skin, warm and deliberate. 10 seconds passed and it felt like an hour. Then they moved the light away, and she heard them walking around the room, slowly looking at her things. She could see their shape, large and bulky, like they were wearing two coats. They had a baseball cap on, and the flashlight, it just kind of swept across her walls, her desk, and her dresser. They didn't shine it back on her again. After a few moments, they felt like eternity. They left her room. But she could still hear them walking through the house, through her siblings' empty rooms, opening doors and moving things, and she lay there, frozen and drenched in sweat, too terrified to move. She wanted to grab her phone, call her dad, who she knew was sleeping downstairs, call 911, run, scream, do anything, but she couldn't. She was trapped in her own body, paralyzed by fear, convinced that if she made a sound, they'd come back, and she didn't know what their intentions were. Somehow, and she still doesn't know how to this day, she passed out, maybe from the adrenaline crash and maybe just from sheer exhaustion. The next thing she did know, though, it was 6 a.m. and she could hear her parents downstairs. She ran down and asked them if one of them had been in her room last night. They both shook their head and said no. In that moment, she broke down sobbing. Then someone was in my room last night. And that's when her dad noticed things were a little off. Every door to the outside was unlocked, some even standing wide open. And there was a duffel bag sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Inside was a coil of nylon rope and an empty USB flash drive. Someone had been planning something. Police came, they took the bag, but there was nothing else they could do. The intruder was gone, and they hadn't taken anything else. There were no prints, no evidence, and no leads. Art didn't sleep in her own room for a week. When she finally did, she would keep a machete next to her bed, and she still does 10 years later. Her most common nightmare is that someone is standing in the shadows of her room, watching her sleep. When you're 22 years old and you finally get your first apartment, there's this feeling of independence, of safety, of just having your own space that's finally completely yours. For Myra, that feeling lasted exactly 1 week. See, she had just moved into her new place, a first floor apartment in a complex with automatic locking doors. The kind of security feature that's supposed to make you feel safe. It was summer, there's still light outside, and she was in the middle of unpacking, just finally settling in. She decided to run downstairs to grab her mail from the entrance to the complex. This was a completely normal, everyday thing. She was on the phone with her boyfriend as she walked back to her apartment, chatting about nothing important. She sat on her bed opening the mail while still talking when she dropped her phone. It bounced and slid under the bed. Annoyed, she got down the floor and reached under to grab it. And that's when she saw something that made her blood run cold. There was someone under her bed. A man lying perfectly still with his back towards her, head tucked to his chest so she couldn't quite see his face, and he hadn't seen her yet. Every instinct in her body screamed to run, to hide, to panic. But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed her phone, kept her voice steady, and said into her phone, "Sorry, I just dropped my phone. I'm gonna take a shower real quick and I'll call you back." See, the bathroom was right next to her bed, and so she walked in casually, like nothing was wrong, closed the door and locked it, and then turned the shower on. Then she immediately climbed out the window. Her apartment was on the first floor, so it was easy to just drop to the ground, ran across the street, and called 911. The operator told her to stay nearby, but out of reach, to watch the entrance and her bathroom window to see if anybody came out. So she hid behind a car across the street, watching and waiting. Her boyfriend arrived just before the police did. She handed them her keys and told them exactly what she saw, and watched as he disappeared into her apartment building. Moments later, two officers emerged. They were holding a thin, exhausted-looking man, and his eyes looked wild. But he didn't resist, he just kind of stared straight ahead with this vacant, unsettling expression. Myra was shaking and crying, a complete mess. One of the officers stayed with her, trying to calm her down, while the other processed the scene. And then the officer told her something that made her realize just how close she'd come to a disaster. When they walked into the room and they found the man, he wasn't under the bed anymore. He was standing outside the bathroom door, holding one of her kitchen knives, waiting for her to come out of the shower. Chances are she had screamed when she saw him. If she had panicked, he would have known she'd spotted him, and who knows what would have happened then. But because she stayed calm, because she created that believable cover story about just taking a shower, she bought herself the time she needed to escape. An investigation unfolded and revealed that the man was homeless and suffering from severe mental illness. He'd somehow slipped in through her apartment door while she was getting her mail, in that brief window when the automatic lock hadn't quite engaged yet. He'd been hiding under her bed and waiting. The man ended up being placed in a mental health facility, and Myra's boyfriend moved in with her the very next day. The police told her that what she did was truly amazing, and that her quick thinking and ability to stay rational in that moment of pure terror likely saved her life. Because the scariest monsters aren't always the ones in our nightmares. Sometimes they're the ones hiding in plain sight, just under your bed, waiting for us to come back. Irish was 17, home alone in West Belfast. His family had just gone grocery shopping. He was in his room on the second floor, playing games on his PC with his headphones on. Door closed, like always. After about an hour or so of playing, he got up to use the bathroom, and when he came back, he just closed his door again and kept playing. 30 minutes later or so, he realized that he forgot his phone, so he got up to go grab it from the bathroom. And that's when he noticed that his door was open. Just slightly, just ajar. His house wasn't drafty, and the door didn't just open on its own, but he figured he probably hadn't closed it all the way. So he went out, grabbed his phone, came back, and made sure the door was shut all the way this time. Sometime later, he heard his family come home. He heard them bring in the first load of shopping, and then go back out to the car for more. When they came back in, they just called his name. He would go downstairs to help his mom, and she was standing by the back patio door, which was wide open. And she asked him that if he had gone out, when they were gone, why didn't he close the door? Well, he hadn't been out. He'd been in his room the entire time. So they walked outside, and they saw that one of the deck chairs had been dragged over to this low part of the fence, and it was positioned facing this small clearing that would go into the woods just across the street. The chair itself definitely wasn't placed there by him or his mother. So the first thing that came to mind was that someone had been in his house, and he thinks that someone broke in, came in through the back doors, came upstairs, opened his door, saw him sitting there with his headphones on, and then went back downstairs and either waited or left just then. Maybe they even thought that they'd wait till he left and they were planning something worse, but this family came home with the shopping, and the intruder must have panicked and ran outside. Whoever it was, though, had slipped out that back door and used that chair to climb over the fence and disappeared into the woods. But the part that doesn't really make sense to him is why break in the middle of the day? And if they saw him sitting there completely vulnerable with the headphones on, with his back to the door, why didn't they do something then? Maybe it was just a robbery, maybe something else. But he doesn't have any proof that any of this happened. There's no evidence, no witnesses. But in his mind, he's certain that someone was in his house. Because a week later, it would happen again. This time it was around 2 a.m., and he was in his room, playing games again and drifting off to sleep. His mom came in and shook him awake, asking why he had went outside in the middle of the night. Again, he hadn't. He'd been asleep in his room. So she told him that she heard that back door slam and kind of questioned him why he was lying to her. Her bedroom was just right above the kitchen, and she could feel the impact of the door shaking, and she knew that his dad was still working the night shift, so there was only the three of them in the house, him, his mom, and sister. So he went downstairs with her, and the back door was wide open again, and the backyard was pitch black. So he never really knew if somebody was out there. Instead of going out there, he just closed the door, grabbed the flashlight, and kind of searched the whole yard with the light through the glass. He didn't see anything, so he just locked the door and went back to bed. He didn't find anything, no person, no sights of forced entry, and no real explanation to what slammed the door. The next day, though, when his father got home, he changed the locks. The weirdest part is that this happened twice and nothing was stolen. And nothing was moved, no drawers were opened or searched, at least from what they could tell. And whoever was coming into their house didn't really seem to be looking for valuables. So what exactly were they looking for? Fortunately, they were already in the process of selling the property, and they moved out a few weeks later, and he still has no actual idea of what happened or why, just the memory of it occurring.